Hello and welcome to another Oblivion Plays video where today we're moving away from Flight Sim and into Train Sim world. This is Dovetail's latest iteration of their Train Simulator series, which was originally a development from the Microsoft Train Simulator, which over the years they've upgraded, improved and moved it over into the Unreal Engine. And then last, I think it was July or at least the summer of 2018, they released this Train Sim World, which is a separate product rather than just a re-release of the Train Simulator series, which I've been a long-term fan of. I hadn't moved into Train Sim World until very recently, so now that I'm exploring, I thought I'd share a video with you guys. So if we jump into the main menu, as of the 30th of October they've introduced these mastery challenges which I've yet to explore, so we'll be looking into that today. We'll just skip that for now. So with the default package you see you've got like a German world, the main Spessartbahn. You've got the Northern Transpennine route which is set in the 1980s, so you've got some historical routes and rolling stock, so as you can see with the kind of the older diesel units. There's a Long Island Railroad which is set in New York City, which is like a commuter railway system there. And then my personal favourite, which is the Great Western Express, which I used to use quite frequently from Cheltenham to London Paddington. A very iconic route which they're still using, the Class 43, which is now actually retired from Great Western Railways. But we can still use them in this simulator, which is quite cool. And today we're going to go into the Great Western Express route. And what I'm going to do is pick one of the Class 166 routes, just as an introduction. So that's this one, so it's like a commuter train. And then, just as a caveat, I'm not by any means an expert at train sim, and I have very limited knowledge of planes versus my knowledge of aircraft, which I've got a passion for. I do love trains though, and so that's why I thought I'd share this with you. So I'll share what I know and give you some tips and tricks on how to drive this train. But without further ado, let's move forward and let's pick a route. So as you can see, actually if we go back, you can see that you get different ways of exploring each route. So you either kind of do the journeys, which is almost like a campaign option where you build on your experience and you do kind of more challenging routes. The training says what it does on the tin, where you basically just learn how to drive each of the trains. And then the scenarios, as you can see, it's quite limited on the number of scenarios that you have. I don't know whether this unlocks more as you work through the journeys, but at the moment I've only got 5 scenarios. But as you can see, they basically work through the different types of train. And then you've got your timetable, which basically gives you hundreds of different options depending on which train you pick, and basically just gives you different route lengths depending on the time. So what we'll do is we'll do a shorter route, which will be the Greenford to London Paddington route, which basically gives me the opportunity to show you how to stop at each stations and then working into London Paddington, which is a very iconic train station. So let's do this. So, welcome into the Class 166. We'll make a quick start because we are on a timetable. So, first thing you do is set the master key to unlocked, move the reverser to forward. You need to change the headlights to the day setting. We'll buzz the guard a couple of times, and then using the either using the throttle or using your keyboard keys, you can release the brakes. And then we'll slowly start to increase. So I tend to go up to setting 3 on the throttle till we get up to about 3 miles an hour, and then I slowly increase that to basically prevent the wheels from slipping. And then we can go up to full throttle. So like I said, this is the Class 166, which was introduced in the 1990s by British Rail, which is when the railway network in the UK was still nationalised, and British Rail was the kind of nationalised company that operated the railways and also introduced some of these trains like the Class 166. Obviously over the years it's been refreshed. In I think it was 2010, Great Western Railway updated their trains, introduced new carpets, trims, interiors, etc., new toilets. And then did more in kind of 2014, where they again upgraded the trains even further and modernised them with kind of new buzzers, new door buttons, upgraded the toilets further and LED lighting, etc. And then they introduced the new livery, which we can see over here, which is like the dark green with the almost kind of Art Deco 1930s style writing on it. So we're only going about 50 miles an hour here, so we'll start to slow down in a second. So go up to full service. Do you want to go to setting 3 because that So you don't want to get setting 4 because that's the emergency brake, so just be cautious not to do that because it upsets the passengers. So I like to be around about 20 miles an hour but at the start of the platform, and then just slowly start releasing the brake down to about 10 miles an hour, and then I do introduce the last little bit of brake when we're almost at the stopping point. So we go to brake 1. As we start to slow down, and then we can go brake 2. And we're stopped. So the door controls are just here. So we go to the bottom one, and that releases the doors. And then we can get out the seat and explore the station. If I get back onto the camera control. So I think this is part of the new update as of the 30th of October 2019. So, oh no, so this actually is to do a different scenario. Interesting. We definitely don't want to do that. So I guess this is part of the timetable options. I've not actually done the timetables before, so that explains why I wasn't sure what that was. I assumed it was part of the new update because basically the new updates introduced some more kind of objectives and things. Whereas before all you were doing was basically finding some Easter eggs, which I may or may not be able to find during this journey. I've already found quite a few of them, so if there's any left, we'll see if we can find any as we get barged by that passenger. What I found is you used to not be able to fall off the platform, but now you can, which is a bit worrying because it doesn't actually seem to be a way to get up other than going up via the train. Obviously that does break a bit of the realism. But I can't find any of the Easter eggs here, so I'm not sure if there are any left at this train platform. They're usually on the other side. But anyway, let's get into the seat because we need to lock the doors. So although it's been out now for about 14 months. Actually, probably longer than that. It's kind of getting up to a year and a half now. There are still quite a lot of bugs in this game. I've noticed, such as the doors opening on the wrong side, passengers getting off on the railway like I just did, and basically when I say the doors opening on the wrong side, it won't let you unload your passengers unless you unlock the door on the wrong side of the train, which is it's a bit crazy. But we might be able to see some of the bugs during this game. But yeah, it's definitely not completely polished yet, which is a bit disappointing. But let's talk about the interface. So the top right, as you just saw, there's you get points for basically driving well, so keeping under the speed limit, not upsetting the passengers. Below that you have your signal that's coming up, so obviously we've got this green signal that's just straight ahead of us, and below that's just current speed limit, which obviously fluctuates depending on what part of the line you are, so you've got to be really careful not to speed. And then the bottom right is basically your driver information graphic, where it gives you your current speed on the speedometer, and then the red icon is where the red icon is basically your current speed limit. This is your throttle setting or brake setting. This is your reverser setting. This is your brake pressures and I don't know what the MR is, but I'm assuming that's something to do with the throttle or the brake. This is your current gradient of the track that you're on. This, I think, gives you kind of warnings about your signals and possibly wheel slip, but I'm not 100% sure because I've not actually seen that activate yet. And again, I don't know what this is, but I'm assuming it's something to do with the guard. It might be on other trains that works. But there's a bit of a mixture between kind of using your keys and then actually interacting with the cockpit and pressing the buttons. So we'll start to slow down now as we're coming up to this station. Advantage of the modern trains is they do stop very quickly versus the older trains that we'll experience on the Transpennine. Although I've probably pushed this one a little bit too fast. Yeah, that wouldn't happen in real life. We wouldn't be stopping that dramatically, as we just overshoot a little bit, but not to worry. I'll show you when I'm not chatting about kind of the interface things. I'll show you kind of a tactic I use on kind of how to judge the stopping distance on this train. Obviously, it fluctuates depending on which train you're in. And depending on how good the brakes are. The older trains have like cheesy brakes. They just don't stop. Whereas the modern ones, I got away there with leaving it quite late because the brakes are very, very good. It's not great for the passengers, obviously. So this is what I was talking about. So you get some the least regs that you've got to find, such as the safety signs and route maps. Which I think is quite a good idea. It just keeps you engaged in the game. Otherwise, you basically would just be stopping and then just having to twiddle your thumbs for about a minute or so as the passengers unload and get on. I can't see anything on the other platform to suggest that there's one up there. I don't think we've got enough time to go all the way over there. So the environment's very quite realistic. You know, you've got your passengers getting off and on. The stations are very detailed with accurate signs, which is quite nice. And you know, they all seem quite authentic as well. So now we're going into London Paddington. So it's only a very short stopper, this one. So I'll do, if you guys like it, I'll do some more of this series. And I think we definitely need to explore the Transpennine route, because it's much more challenging. They got the older trains which don't have the same level of automation as this one, you know, with the kind of auto throttle brake, and even one of them, even you have to change the gears, which is quite hands-on, really. But in terms of the signals, those of you not familiar with a kind of train sim, obviously when you get a green light like this one, that indicates that the next signal will be green or yellow. When you get to a yellow signal, that basically tells you that if it's a double yellow, so some of them have 2 lights on them, that tells you that the one after that's yellow. If it's a single yellow, it tells you the one after that current signal is a red. So you just got to, that's the other kind of element. It's basically keeping under the speed limit. It's judging your stopping distances, and it's judging your signals as well. That's the kind of crux of Train Simulator, as well as just having the enjoyment of driving these amazing trains. But going back to the environment, you know, all the lines are very busy. The Thames Valley line that we're on at the moment is a very busy line in real life. So full of trains, and they've done well to simulate that. When we'll see in a second when we're going into London Paddington, it just feels very authentic. And having been on this line before when I was younger, it does feel very much like how it felt when I was doing it in real life, which is good. Some of the scenarios, so this one seems relatively straightforward in terms of the signals, but some of the other scenarios, you're chasing yellows as you follow other trains, and it can be a little bit more challenging, obviously, to try and stay on your timetable, whilst also kind of judging your speed and the signals ahead of you and the train ahead of you. So as we can see on top right, there's a 50-mile-an-hour speed limit coming up soon. So we need to just start to slow down for that. So we're not to speed, because then we lose the points. So I only use brake setting 1 if we can get away with it. Just to keep it, like I said, nice and smooth for the passengers. And the speed limits are on these little signs here. So yeah, judge that pretty well. And oddly enough, it actually doesn't change the speed limit until. So if your speed limit's increasing, it won't increase until the whole entire train has passed the speed limit sign. Which again, I'm not sure whether that's realistic, in terms of real life, because I don't understand how a driver would judge when they've completely passed the speed limit. Whereas I suspect it's more like driving in the UK, whereas once the driver's passed the speed limit, that's when the speed is applicable. The other thing about signals is, so you see above this one, there's almost like an arrow indicator. That's used when you're changing lines, and often that's quite important, because there'll often be a restricted speed limit on the line. So, for example, here it says 25 miles an hour on the line that connects the two individual lines, and you've got to judge that as well. Sometimes I've noticed it doesn't always give you that speed limit on the top right, as we just need to slow down again for this one. So these are the speed limits coming up just ahead of us. But as you get into Paddington, it's you have these 6 lines that are all converging, so it gets quite hectic with all the different connections and things. When you're leaving Paddington, there's a signal with an indicator above it, which actually tells you which line you're going to be going on to, so you can kind of expect how many lines you're going to cross. As this is the Class 43 that I was talking about at the start, which is the original high-speed train in the UK, the intercity train, which goes up to 125 miles an hour, which we can explore in a different video. Much longer than the Class 1-6. So we've got a yellow signal just there, so that's going to basically tell us that there's a red signal coming up shortly. So we'll just keep an eye out for that. We're going slow enough that we can kind of anticipate it, as I'm just going to slow down to 25 miles an hour. And like I said, this is because we're going on this connector here. I can't remember what these are called. Basically, there's this connecting line, because it's got quite, relatively speaking, quite a steep turning curve. The speed limit's much lower, just to prevent you from derailing. As we approach Paddington, so like I said, it's a big station. Reasonably well modelled. One thing that I'm not particularly impressed with is the texture work in the station itself, on the arches and the metal beams that hold up the arches. It just doesn't quite look realistic enough for me. But in terms of obviously the platforms and how the station is modelled, this is what I'm talking about here, which I don't think is particularly good. But in terms of the rest of it, it does look very authentic. So it looks like we're going to be bang on time as we arrive into Paddington. And we definitely don't want to overshoot because there's the buffers. I'm just going to move forward a little bit. Oh, that's quite cool. You get like the echo effect of being in London Paddington. And there we go. The other thing I'm not particularly impressed with is the sounds of the train itself seem very, very quiet. That's not me turning the volume down. That's literally as loud as the sounds are in the game. So I think that's something they could just balance a little bit better, because you don't really hear the train when you're driving it, and when you're in... Oh, I've unlocked the wrong doors. There we go. When you're actually on the train, it's actually quite loud. There we go. So welcome to London Paddington. We'll let the passengers get off, and then we'll wrap up. Do let me know what you think about me do some videos in Train Sim World. I think it fits well into my channel, and I hope you guys like it. Feel free to do any recommendations on different routes that I can explore, or the different trains. I'd love to hear your feedback on it. But I think my next video I probably want to do a Class 43, a slightly longer journey, and then I think we'll explore into Transpennine. But if you have any ideas, I would appreciate the feedback as we just wait for the passengers to get off, and then we'll finish off the scenario. What I'll do is just see if I can find any of the Easter eggs. Is that one up there? Is that just a white? Oh no, that's just a white bit of fascia, whatever you want to call it. This is what I mean. Like, the signs are pretty authentic, apart from that one's bugging out. It's all kind of related to the London railway network and talking about the Crossrail and things. So yeah, no, it looks good. Let's lock the doors. I don't know whether the scenario will just carry on. We'll just see what happens when we close the doors. There we go. Objective complete. So that's it. At the end of your scenario, you get given a screen, which basically gives you some data about your journey. And as you can see, we're pretty much bang on time the whole way there, and a little bit early at London Paddington, which is pretty unusual for the British railway system. But yeah, I think we'll wrap it up there, and I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Do subscribe if you have enjoyed it, and please like the video to give me feedback, whether you're enjoying the videos, and also it helps promote my channel. Like my Facebook page if you want to keep up to date with what I'm doing when I'm uploading videos and when I'm live streaming. But otherwise, I'll see you next time. Thanks very much.